Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling Review Series for the 9th of January in 1982. Continuing to kind of push towards Sergeant Slaughter claiming that he wants his money back for the Cobra Clutch Challenge. He claims that the challenges that have been laid out to him are not legitimate nor fair to him. That seems to be his main focus there. Um, and Shorter number of matches because there's, I guess you'd say, less going on or something here in the beginning of this particular year. We've got Billy Robinson and Keith Larson out first. Robinson has been around. Slaughter basically says he's not being given the proper uh, acknowledgement as, you know, I guess you'd say champions. Also, Jake Roberts and Blackjack Mulligan Jr., aka Barry Windham, are tag teaming again. We opened that up into then that's before the Larson match. We opened that up into Mike Miller and Doug Vines being their opponents. And again, Jake Roberts, tag team guy, basically has been a tag team guy for the majority of his acknowledgement of a run here. Um, and I don't necessarily know if that's uh, a good or bad thing, really. It doesn't necessarily seem to matter, but Roberts seems to be lacking a main feud. Sometimes he's talking Piper, sometimes he's talking, um, Ole Anderson. But also, too, I think at this time it's a little different in the nature of things. Mulligan coming up with top wrist lock and wrist control type stuff. Roberts coming in and holding Mike Miller, who looks like he could have been a greater asset than he actually ended up being in the area. Although a good hand, who is a guy who can be challenged is a good idea upon occasion. Roberts comes in and kind of does a pump check with Doug Vines along the way, manages to get the side headlock takeover, and then, of course, Roberts comes forward with the attempted Irish whip, and then head scissors takeovers. Super simple stuff, body slams and basic maneuvers by uh, um, Blackjack gets him where he wants to be. Attempted um, basics here, and also some degree of um, Doug Vines taking Blackjack, who doesn't have the level of experience of Roberts or any of virtually most of the main guys on the roster. Obviously, Blackjack coming into his own in the time. Both guys grappling for head control here, basic maneuvers along the way, and ultimately we see that in fact can kind of get can kind of get things going there. Roberts comes up, gets his hair pulled by Vines. Vines continuing to cut the ring off a little bit and not getting everything he wants out of the process. Gets enough, but not the full shebang, so to speak, and manages to um, keep things going in the direction that he would prefer. Tag off to Blackjack Mulligan, who Jr., who comes in, hits a couple of shots, hits the kind of flying forearm type maneuver, and then keeps things going in his general direction. Snapmare takeover. Match runs a little longer than is expected. All four guys break into the ring. Jake Roberts hits the knee lift, and then Mulligan Jr. hits the Bulldog, and the baby faces are victorious. We move to the next in the series of matches here, which happens to be a kind of a run. The Billy Robinson, this time with Lord Alfred Hayes, as we're talking about. Robinson facing off against his adversary of the moment, which happens to be Keith Larson, I believe. Yeah, Keith Larson. And I mean, obviously, a one-sided match. You're not going to get much out of a guy like Keith Larson in a deal like this. Robinson, who's mostly known for his AWA stuff. Lord Alfred Hayes only manages him a couple of times. I think maybe once or twice on television. So I don't really know if they were trying to get something out of that. Very basic wrestling maneuvers, arm bars, arm locks, wrist locks, and the like. Robinson always coming out the better wrestler. Although Larson does manage a couple of cradles and moves that you wouldn't suspect him to get. Trying to put forward more of a collegiate style. A couple of times, Robinson referred to as a British heavyweight champion, British Commonwealth champion, I think is something I heard at least once in the commentary. But the idea that he is an international star, a pretty big deal here. Then we kind of see some upcoming with Tony Anthony and Buddy Landell talking about, being ready to challenge guys like the Andersons and others with more experience. Basically, stay on a guy and keep him down is all that Tony Anthony can say in a promo. Obviously, he is super green at this point, but you have to start somewhere. Tony Anthony later becomes Dirty White Boy in Smoky Mountain, a very underrated guy. Also, later is humiliated by the WWF, WWE with the Teal Hopper gimmick. And everyone says, "Oh, it's just comedy," but at the same time, when you're trying to have a career with something, doing comedy does limit you for the future. Jeff Swords against Jimmy Valiant coming up here next. Swords, a relative newcomer to the area, has done a couple of enhancement matches before. Valiant manages to crank on his adversary, and again, punch, kicks, super basic stuff from Jimmy Valiant. Valiant was around 40, 50 years. Doesn't really do a heck of a lot. Didn't really need to. Still a babyface here in Mid-Atlantic and gets a victory after an elbow drop and dancing around is what he's doing. The idea of the tag team title tournament seems to be beginning to formulate. Blackjack Jr. and Jake Roberts got a promo. They're talking about liking teaming together, and obviously Blackjack very happy with his team with Jake Roberts and the opportunities he's been given by Mid-Atlantic. Also, we kind of see a promo here too of Ray Stevens, who continues to insinuate that he's going to get even with Ole Anderson. Ole Anderson's ducking him, being the main idea of the promo there. Then we move to the next in the series of matches, which happens to be Terry Taylor taking on Bill White. Taylor being lauded as a major babyface at the time, and Bill White, relative newcomer. Taylor with some takedowns tries to roll through, tries to get everything he possibly can, can't get everything he wants out of it. Head scissors takeover by Taylor, hangs on, and then gets a deep arm drag. Other basic maneuvers by Taylor. Taylor certainly put in the babyface position. Bill White a little bit bigger, overpowers him from time to time, but Taylor always comes out with the better wrestling techniques, hits the 5-arm, and then gets a go behind. Loving the advancement of Terry Taylor. Of course, Terry Taylor in Mid-South, a pretty big deal. The team of Carl Fergie and Ox Baker are wearing other tag team belts. The distinction between the belts that everyone should care about and the belts that Fergie and Ox are holding, I assume, are the equivalent of like a Georgia tag team or Carolina's tag team belt, but it's never really talked about much in promos, so that does lead to confusion. Also, proof that even old school wrestling has an over reliance on championship belts, apparently. Anyway, Ivan Koloff and Ole Anderson getting ready as a team for the tournament that's upcoming. Anderson and Koloff going after Buddy Landell and Tony Anthony. Punch kick, basic stuff. Koloff, a former world champion. Anderson, basically a synonymous name with tag team wrestling in the area. But we see several attempts by Tony Anthony to get across the ring. Doesn't get what he wants on that, but and cannot make the tag. The ring is beautifully cut off by Ivan Koloff. Koloff with a couple of body slams, and ultimately there we see Ole Anderson managing a couple of shots there, hard shots along the way, and eventually the team of Anderson and Koloff, which seems to be a regular team for the next little while, at least the next few months here in the area, getting a brawlers style victory and successfully navigating the continuation of that run. John Studd is back here, basically saying he's going to dominate the Mid Atlantic area. Studd is in and out and doesn't really seem to stay too many places at the time. Sergeant Slaughter says he is one of the hardest working champions in the area, and he is tired of being challenged by lesser talents. Also denies being willing to put things on the line with Blackjack Mulligan Jr. And the tag team championships have been, in fact, returned to the Andersons because Ray Stevens has agreed to return them, and ultimately somehow they get stripped or beaten, and there is a tag team title tournament upcoming across multiple cities. But that was the way we will close this particular episode. We'll be back with more right after this.